Hello, Triton community. My name is Jeremy Riffle, the Superintendent of Triton School Corporation. I am joined by Sarrah Arvesen, Triton Junior Senior High School Counselor, Student Advocate, and Difference Maker. Also joined by Officer Carl Amsden, Bourbon Police Officer, DARE Officer, and father of 5 Triton School Corporation scholars. We are also joined, and will also be the source of our information today, Mrs. Brittney Schori. She's a health and human science educator. She serves at the Purdue Extension as a Purdue Extension educator in LaGrange County, and she is also the wife of Mr. Blake Schori, Triton Junior Senior High School business teacher and coach. The purpose of this spotlight is to educate, inform, and intervene. Some of the information that we share today will be a review of what we talked a little bit about on January 9th, but we want to refine the message a little bit and make sure it's a little bit more focused and the content is a little bit more focused for our parents and our scholars who may be listening in. We want to reproduce the information in a user-friendly format to help our scholars and community stay safe. How are we going to educate you and our community? We simply want you to be aware of what we're doing at Triton School Corporation to continue to work on this epidemic that we all call vaping or jouling. So we'll have more information in the presentation to follow, but I do want to introduce you to these people and how they play a role in that. So talking a little bit about prevention. Carl, talking a little bit about how we're going to educate our scholars, how we're going to keep them safe as it relates to the conversation of vaping.
So it's DARE in 5th grade. I teach my students to be safe and be responsible and make safe and responsible decisions. And we do health facts and health effects about smoking, about use of tobacco and alcohol. So we're just trying to teach and educate the students at a young age to try to reach them. That's really what we're trying to do with the DARE in 5th grade. We also have curriculums that we'll use for high school and junior high. Tobacco companies spend more than $26 million every day to promote their products in the United States. In 2018, the Surgeon General declared an epidemic for vaping and high school students. According to statistics in 2019, 27.5% of our teenagers vaped. That's 5 million students or children per day.
In Indiana alone, tobacco companies spent $284.5 million on marketing tobacco products.
Each day in Indiana, 30 people die from tobacco-related illness. That's 11,100 a year.
9 out of 10 cigarette smokers first tried smoking by the age of 18.
Every year, 4,100 teens in Indiana become new daily smokers.
If trends continue, 151,000 Indiana kids alive today will die prematurely from a tobacco-related illness. These statistics and more can be found at www.voiceindiana.org. Please go to this website and be heard. We now welcome Mrs. Brittney Schori to take you through a very informative presentation.
E-cigarettes and vaping. What do you think e-liquid and e-juice contains? If you answered C, you were correct. Propylene glycol, flavoring, and nicotine. So what exactly is e-liquid and e-juice? There are several different flavors. Basically, e-liquid or e-juice is the flavored liquid that is used in e-cigarettes. There are a couple examples on what e-liquid or e-juice comes in. It's often available in a range of different nicotine strengths, as well as, like I said, lots and lots of different flavors. Why do you think youth or kids try e-cigarettes? You answered D, you're correct. Flavors taste good, to quit smoking, and their friends are doing it. This is an infographic that looks at teens are more likely to use e-cigarettes than cigarettes. If you look at the orange and the yellow, the orange represents cigarette use over the past month, and yellow represents e-cigarette use over the past month. You can see that e-cigarette use over the past month between 8th, 10th, and 12th graders is significantly higher than regular cigarette use. You can also see underneath of that, boys are 2 times more likely to use e-cigarettes than girls. We are now going to watch a small video that is going to look at how e-cigarette and how they work.
The use of electronic cigarettes, or e-cigarettes, is on the rise and has become the new hot topic in public health. But what is an e-cigarette, really? E-cigs are also known as electronic nicotine delivery systems. There are many different shapes and styles of e-cigarettes, but no matter what they look like, all e-cigs work the same way, by vaporizing nicotine. Originally developed in China as a method to help smokers quit, almost all the major tobacco companies have either bought e-cigarette companies or set up in-house development. It is possible to buy e-cigarettes labeled as nicotine-free, but when scientists at the FDA tested these nicotine-free e-cigs, they still found small amounts of nicotine. Nicotine is the highly addictive drug naturally found in tobacco. E-cigarettes are designed to deliver nicotine into the blood, just like regular cigarettes, by smokers inhaling it into the lungs. But how do e-cigarettes contain nicotine if there's no tobacco? Since nicotine cannot be turned into a vapor on its own, it's mixed with chemicals called propylene glycol and vegetable glycerin. This mixture is called e-juice. When a user inhales, the battery heats the e-juice, which becomes a vapor that gets inhaled into the lungs. There are a wide variety of e-cig products, and each contains e-juice with a different amount of nicotine and chemicals. But scientifically, what do we know about this e-juice liquid? Well, not much. Without regulation, companies are not required to inform consumers. E-cigarettes are often marketed as cool and fashionable, but this new trend is delivering nicotine, a highly addictive drug, in varying or unknown amounts.
That video just showed us a nice depiction of e-juice as well as how electronic cigarettes work. Looking at a couple more pictures on exactly how they function. It is a battery-operated device, and it does change that liquid chemical into a vapor that's then inhaled by the user. Again, there's a couple pictures up here. All e-cigarettes have 4 main components: a cartridge or a reservoir or a pod tank that actually holds the liquid solution, so that e-juice or that e-liquid that contains the varying amounts of nicotine, flavorings, and those other chemicals. An atomizer, which is that heating element, a power source, which is typically a battery usually, and a mouthpiece, so that device that is used to inhale the vapor or that liquid chemical. What do youth or kids call e-cigarettes in today's society? Again, society is constantly changing, so as well as what people call things, but cartridges, carts, water pipe, vape pipe, pen, Joule, and those are a couple different Joules or different cartridges and pipes and whatnot that students may be utilizing. Different types of e-cigarettes. I have a couple different pictures up here. As far as cig-like disposables, those are only one-time use, and that's going to be your bottom picture. So they are only one-time use, and they do look like cigarettes. And then there are cig-lights, so they look very similar, and they do still look like cigarettes. They are replaceable. They have pre-filled cartridges. Those pre-filled cartridges have that e-juice. Couple slides, I'll show you exactly what those look like. Vape pens, they look just like pens, can be refilled with e-juice. Advanced tank systems, which is going to be that top right picture. They are box-like, tubular, and they again still can be filled with that e-juice. Again, emerging constantly, and this is the latest e-cigarette device or vape starter kit. This is going to be your pod system, and it looks like a watch that you can track maybe steps or physical activity or something of that matter, but it is actually you can put e-liquids or e-juices in it, and you can actually use it to vape. So again, it's important to know that there are products out there that we don't know that we can be used to vape or being used as an e-cigarette. So what is a Joule? That is a term or whatnot that students or kids are using these days now. It's basically just a brand of e-cigarettes that's really popular in the US. It does look like a USB drive, And there's a picture of it exactly like a USB drive, which might be hard to figure out if it actually isn't a USB drive. So how do these work? They operate by a heating cartridge, that pod, and they do utilize e-liquid. Those pods look like that. So the pods will go up to the top of the right of the Joule, and they have that e-liquid that contains aerosol that's then inhaled by the person using it. It's really important to note that one of these Joule cartridges, the photo on the bottom, one of them, or one pod, has roughly as much nicotine as one pack of cigarettes. Other electronic devices, e-hookahs, they're the same as e-cigarettes. Heated tobacco products, often called as heat not burn. They're heated tobacco products to high temperatures, and they are a battery-powered system. They also create aerosols. And cannabis vaporizers, they heat actual cannabis, whether it's leaf or oil form, to a temperature that creates aerosol. So how do kids get these? Kids get devices and pods anywhere. They're sold online, they're sold in stores, gas stations. The device typically runs about $35, and that 4-pack that I showed you a photo of before of those pods cost about $16 just for 4 of them. To prevent sales to underage users, whether it's online websites, use ID match and age verification technology. They do have monitoring systems and penalties in place for resellers, but it's difficult to track, and some youth do get them and then they sell them. There are youth access laws in Indiana in place right now. The minimum age for sale for tobacco products is 18, and there are penalties in place for both minors and merchants who violate this law. Establishments are required to post signs that do state that sales are prohibited to minors or anyone under the age of 18, and that minors are prohibited from buying electronic smoking devices, including e-cigarettes. Why do kids vape? Among high school cigarette smokers, more than 7 out of 10 use e-cigarettes. That's a high statistic, but why do they do it? Alternative to smoking. They do vaping tricks. A typical popular vaping trick is called cloud chasing right now. And you can go on YouTube and type in cloud chasing, and basically they use vapor to do tricks to create lots of smoke. To quit smoking, other friends are doing it, to be cool, to reduce stress, for fun, and again, the flavorings taste really good and they're catered to teens or adolescents. Again, high teen exposure to e-cigarette advertising. 7 in 10 teens are exposed to e-cigarette ads. Among middle school students, 52.8% are exposed to retail ads, 35.8% to internet ads, 34.1% to TV and movie ads, and 25% to newspaper and magazine ads. Among high school students, 56.3% are exposed to retail ads, 42.9% to internet ads. Current e-cigarette use among middle and high school students, this is 2019, and this is from the National Youth Tobacco Survey. If you look at 2019, high school students is 27.5%, and this is current e-cigarette use among them. So that's a pretty high statistic. 25%, over 25%. As far as middle school students, about 10.5%. In 2015, 23.9% of high school students in Indiana used electronic vapor products on at least one day in the past 30 days. The national rate was 24.1%. So we are right at that national average. And I'm sure based on 2015, those numbers are significantly higher based on this health epidemic that Centers for Disease Control and the Health Department has issued. Again, other tobacco products use among students and adults. You can see here that e-cigarettes are much higher than cigars and smokeless tobacco in high school students. Joules do resemble a flash drive. I showed you that picture earlier. They're sleek and they're easy to conceal. Educators reported that youth are using Joule in classroom hallways, restrooms, and sharing devices with their peers. The social use encourages non-users to try it. Again, that's from the American Academy of Pediatrics, and there is so much research going on about electronic devices as far as e-cigarettes and Joules. So why are they difficult to detect? Why are schools struggling to detect? Jouling has significantly less vapor than other cigarettes. It's extremely discreet. A lot of kids or youth are at school or exhaling into shirts, backpacks, they can hide vapor pretty easily. As soon as it comes out, it disappears instantly. It does put off some type of smell. It's usually a sweet, fruity smell, but this could be mistaken easily for some other product, such as perfume, and that's why it's so difficult for schools or even parents to detect. What are some signs of e-cigarette use? So again, pens that aren't pens, new scents I just talked about, potentially fruity smells, vapor, that e-vapor or the e-liquid can be flavored. Doesn't have to be, but if it is, that you can usually smell it. Typical signs of marijuana use is another sign of e-cigarette use, whether it's red eyes, doesn't have a lot of energy, hungry, confused, anxiety, lack of focus, coordination's different, a lot more talkative, decline in studies or usual activities, change in friends, possibly secretive, increased water take, and this is because that propylene glycol that's inside the e-cigarette or that e-juice, it attracts and holds water molecules from its environment. So that can really lead to users have that dry mouth. So that's why they're constantly thirsty or wanting to go and get a drink at the water fountain. Nosebleeds, the water holding effect of e-cigarette vapor can dry out the nasal passages. Those are just some signs of e-cigarette use. And again, everyone is different, so they might show different signs of use. What are some health concerns associated with this epidemic? The vapor can cause lightheadedness, eye and throat irritation, headaches, dizziness, coughing, injuries. There has been defective batteries that have caused fires and explosions. There has been poisoning documented, mostly minor, just vomiting and nausea, but there has been poisoning documented. And then the long-term health effects aren't really known as far as what vapor or e-cigarette vapor does to the human body, but there is ongoing research. Teens developing brains are very susceptible to the effects of nicotine, and again, that one Joule pod has as much nicotine as one pack of cigarettes. So some harmful chemicals that are found in e-cigarettes, we got nicotine, obviously, ultrafine particles that we do inhale deep into our lungs for those people who do use e-cigarettes, flavorants, I'll talk a little bit more about diacetyl, different organic compounds, metals, just harmful ingredients that a lot of youth don't know that they're putting into their bodies. What is an e-cigarette vapor? So we have a couple different things that are in the vapor. Flavoring, again, diacetyl. This is something that damages the lungs when it's inhaled. It's in a lot of e-flavors such as vanilla, anything that's typically sweet. And the particles, sometimes the levels are comparable to cigarette smoke. So that does increase the risk for heart disease, lung cancer, asthma attacks, and a lot of different lung infections. Like I said before, metals, lead, chromium, nickel, copper, things that aren't necessarily supposed to be in our bodies. Exposure to these types of metals can have a variety of negative health effects, including brain damage and even cancer. Tobacco-specific compounds, these are found in cigarettes and they do cause cancer. Carbonyls, this is a compound that's in formaldehyde, and this does potentially cause cancer long term. Significant health effects that are just things coming from e-cigarette vapor. Is there a risk for secondhand exposure to this type of vapor? So yes, there's definitely the risk of secondhand exposure. It is less toxic than cigarette smoke, but there does need to be more testing to determine levels of exposure, but there is ongoing research that is looking at this currently. Some ingredients in the secondhand vapor can cause eye and throat irritation, and something to keep in mind. Flavoring chemicals can also create odors that might irritate people who have a sensitivity to different smells as well. Sharing e-cigarettes and spreading illnesses. So a lot of students like to share things. Who knows what might have been an electronic device or the vape before someone has used it before you. So, for example, maybe there might have been THC or some other illegal substance that was in there besides e-juice or whatnot. So you don't know that. And there could still be residue that's still in that vape, where that cartridge or that pod goes. So that's really important to remind youth that you don't know what was there before. Even if the kids aren't sick, they can still spread germs by sharing their devices. Germs exist in saliva and illnesses can be spread through that direct exposure. For those who do use e-cigarettes, and this is kind of focusing more on obviously adults or those who are over the age of 18, it is strongly recommended that they should be cleaned with soap, water, and sanitized with bleach in a water solution. And even if you are sick and you're continually using your vape device or your electronic e-cigarette, that you don't continuously stay sick. Popcorn lung. So I said the word diacetyl a couple different times throughout this presentation so far, and this is called popcorn lung. Diacetyl is added to a food, added to lots of food, specifically popcorn, to produce a buttery taste. It is harmless when it's ingested on popcorn or in foods, but the issue with diacetyl is that when it's heated, the gene cells continuously change and then they become very harmful to the lungs when they're inhaled. So the gene cells just change. You can see a photo on the left are your normal lungs, and then to the right is a popcorn lung. You can significantly see the difference of how diacetyl has changed the lung formation. Inhaling diacetyl over a long period of time does cause this, and it's linked to serious lung complications, and at some stage, a lung transplant might even be necessary. Research has confirmed that there is diacetyl in the flavoring and chemicals in e-liquid. So this is a huge concern, and a lot of times in today's society, on the news, they'll be saying a lot of youth are coming to the hospital as far as what's going on. There's something strange going on, and a lot of times it has to do with their lungs. So it has something to do with diacetyl a lot of times. Speaking of other things that could go wrong, so dangers.
In a California electronics store, 1 minute a customer is in a back room picking out a TV. The next, his pocket explodes into sparks and flames.
He is screaming and yelling. All of his right leg was completely burnt.
It's the latest e-cigarette to explode in a long list of similar cases across the country. Experts saying most are caused by lithium-ion batteries, often used in modified vape devices made overseas. A study showing 62% of explosions happen while the e-cigarette is in someone's pocket or actively being used. Earlier this year, the first documented case of an e-cigarette killing someone. A 38-year-old man died after his vape pen exploded. His cause of death listed as a projectile wound to the head.
And then the bottom left-hand picture is another explosion that happened to a teenager last year, and they were using their electronic cigarette and it exploded and it broke their jaw. So how can you make a difference? Educate the facts. Not many programs educate youth about the harmful effects of e-cigarettes. A lot of youth and kids think that vaping is much safer than tobacco products or tobacco cigarettes. A lot of students don't know that e-cigarettes even contain nicotine, so sharing that information with them. A study done by the University of Michigan found that when students were asked if they vaped nicotine, marijuana, or just flavoring, 36% of 12th graders reported vaping something, but only a quarter of those said they vaped nicotine. Students had no idea that they were vaping nicotine. They were also unaware of the dangers and addictiveness of nicotine. So something just to educate the facts on. Tell students and kids that you know that there is nicotine and it's just not, it's not safe to utilize as far as any type of tobacco product. You have the power to influence decisions that youth make. Many times parents or guardians don't talk to their children about drugs, addiction, smoking, drinking. For those parents and guardians who do, the results are positive. Youth who do know about these difficult topics in turn make better life choices. Any advice? So if you are to talk to youth or your kids or whomever you might be talking to as far as vaping, I have a little bit of advice for you. Play it casual, keep the conversation open-ended, ask if your kids have heard of it and what they know. They probably know more than you think they do. Youth will look for a chance to answer questions with yes or no, especially adolescents. So I recommend starting the conversation by asking, what do you think about vaping? Because that's open-ended. Talk about the uncertainty of the safety, about nicotine, addiction that goes along with vaping or utilizing e-cigarettes. Stress the seriousness of vaping as a decision. Many students will say that they have parents or family members that vape. Children of people that use vaping or nicotine products are definitely more likely to utilize them because they think it's okay. And lastly, stress the potential consequences of long-term problems, such as popcorn lung disease, cancer, all the unknowns that we don't know yet, that what the vapor may be able to cause, a lot of unknowns that could potentially cause some serious long-term health problems. There are so many resources for parents, for teachers, coaches, healthcare providers. No matter who you are, there is a resource, fact sheet that talks more about e-cigarettes and the use of e-cigarettes and what it can do long-term as far as what information and research has been done thus far. And there is ongoing research currently. A couple more resources for young people. A good mobile app is called This Is Quitting. If youth have already started to vape, it is a good source for them to utilize as far as how to start that process of quitting using electronic cigarettes.
In closing, it is important that we share this information with the intent to intervene and to help. And there are a number of ways we are looking at doing that at Triton School Corporation.
On our school website, we will have an anonymous helpline and report line that students and parents can use to report various topics, including vaping.
As far as curriculum, we have a 5th grade DARE program for our students to help them learn safe and responsible decision making. Also, we will incorporate junior high and high school refreshers as needed.
Mentoring also is an important way to intervene. Through NG3 and Kids Hope USA, we will continue to build relationships with our students by bringing in trusted community partners and invest in our students. We also will be implementing and installing vape detectors at our high school bathrooms to once again keep our students safe at all costs. Lastly, and most importantly, building relationships and surrounding our scholars with good, high-character role models is extremely important at Triton School Corporation. Thank you for your time, and thank you for partnering with Triton School Corporation as we build something great together.